All right, welcome back to the deep dive. If you're here, you're probably a direct response copywriter, am I right?
Most likely, yeah.
And you want to know the secrets to crafting copy that really converts.
Definitely. I think we all do.
Well, you've come to the right place. Because today we're diving deep into one of the most influential books ever written on the subject, Claude Hopkins' Scientific Advertising. You ready, folks? We're about to unearth some serious marketing gold.
It's incredible how relevant a book from 1923 still is.
I know, right? It's like he had a time machine. Hopkins' insights into human psychology, the way he breaks down the principles of persuasive writing, it's as powerful today as it was back then.
Totally agree.
But today, we're not just going to summarize the book. We're going to dissect it. We're going to pull out those golden nuggets that you can use right away in your copywriting.
Love it. A practical deep dive.
Think of it as your crash course in Hopkins 101. We'll be focusing on concepts like UMP and UMS.
Unique mechanism of the problem, unique mechanism of the solution.
Exactly. And of course, we'll hit all the other important elements. Pain points, promises, proof, objections, curiosity, all the good stuff that makes copy truly compelling.
The stuff that makes people take action, makes them click, buy now.
You got it. And speaking of making that sale, one of Hopkins' most fundamental principles was this. Advertising is really just salesmanship multiplied.
Salesmanship in print.
Exactly. He believed that every ad you create, it should be like a high-performing salesperson out there in the field. It has to justify its cost with real, tangible results.
It's all about moving away from those vague claims and really focusing on a data-driven approach.
Right. It's about proving what works. And this is where his background in mail-order advertising was so crucial. Because mail-order, that was a brutal testing ground.
Oh, absolutely.
Only the strongest copies survived in mail-order. It's a great lesson for copywriters today, even if we're not working with print catalogs anymore.
Yeah, those mail-order guys, they had to make every word count. No wasted space. They had to tell a complete and compelling story to get that order form filled out and sent back.
Think about that incredible story Hopkins told about the brush salesman. The guy who boosted his sales by offering a free brush as a service before even trying to make a sale.
It's so clever.
He built trust, didn't he? By giving something away first, it made people more receptive to buying from him.
It's that age-old principle of reciprocity. Give, and you shall receive.
Do you think that still works today, even in the digital world, giving something away for free?
Absolutely. A freebie, whether it's a valuable piece of content, a free trial, or a discount. It's incredibly powerful. It lowers people's resistance. It's a nudge, towards a purchase.
Like all those lead magnets you see online. Free ebooks, checklists, webinars.
It's all based on that free sample philosophy.
Hey, try this little taste of what we offer. Like it. There's more where that came from.
You got it. It's about showcasing your expertise, right? Providing value up front, building trust. It's salesmanship, but disguised as generosity.
So smart. And speaking of salesmanship, we have to talk about Hopkins and mail-order advertising. He was obsessed with it. He called it a laboratory for testing and refining copy.
And for good reason. It was all about results.
He famously refused to change a single word in his Mead Cycle Company ad. The one that was wildly successful.
Sick Hopkins.
He was like, nope, it's been tested, it works, don't touch it.
Talk about confidence in your copy.
It makes sense though, right?
Yeah.
Mail-order ads were all about efficiency.
Totally.
Every single word had to pull its weight.
Think about how much that can teach us today. Even if we're not writing for print catalogs, those principles are still so valuable.
It's about being clear, being compelling. Every word should guide the reader towards that call to action, whether it's on a landing page, an email, even a video script.
Laser focus, that's what it's all about.
Now let's talk about headlines. Hopkins was a huge believer in the power of a captivating headline. He called them attention grabbers.
Oh yeah, he compared them to headlines in a newspaper. You only read the articles that grab your attention, right?
Right. You scan the headlines looking for something that interests you. And Hopkins knew that principle applied to advertising too.
You have to target the right audience and make sure your headline speaks directly to their needs and desires.
Yeah.
And remember how much he believed in testing.
Yeah, oh yeah. He was relentless about it.
Remember that story? He tested over 2,000 headlines for a single product.
2,000 headlines.
Yeah.
That just shows you how important that first impression is. The headline. It's the gateway to getting people to actually read your copy.
And it highlights the importance of testing, right?
For sure.
You can't just assume what will work. You have to experiment.
You have to see what resonates with your specific audience.
Absolutely. It's all about constantly refining your approach, finding the most effective way to get that message across.
All right, so we've talked about the salesmanship aspect of advertising, the lessons from mail order, the importance of headlines. But what about the actual content of the copy itself?
That's where things get really interesting, because that's where Hopkins' deep understanding of human psychology comes in.
He knew how to push those buttons, the pain points, the promises, the proof, how to tap into people's curiosity, all the elements that make copy truly persuasive.
It's like he could see right into the minds of consumers, and he understood what made them tick.
Like how he used curiosity to drive the success of puffed wheat cereal. Remember those ads? Grains puffed to 8 times their size, foods shot from guns. It was like something out of a science fiction novel.
He knew how to pique people's interest.
I bet those ads got people talking.
He tapped into that human desire to know more. That's a powerful thing. We're naturally curious about the novel, the unexpected.
Do you think that same approach would work today? Playing up the curiosity factor?
Of course. Look around. How many headlines do you see teasing some surprising fact or promising to reveal a secret? It's everywhere. It's still about grabbing that reader's attention, making them think, I have to find out what this is all about.
It's a little mental game, isn't it?
It is. And another fascinating insight from Hopkins was the psychological power of price. He had this great anecdote about a $1,000 hat.
$1,000 hat.
I know, right? It was displayed in a department store, just sitting there with a huge price tag. And what happened? It drew massive crowds.
So people were drawn to it because it was so expensive. I don't get it.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it speaks volumes about how we perceive value. Often we associate higher prices with higher quality, whether it's true or not.
Ah, I see. It's like that old saying, you get what you pay for.
Hmm.
So even back then, price psychology was a thing.
It's a timeless principle, and something to keep in mind when you're positioning your product or service today. Where do you want to place it in the market? How do you want people to perceive its value?
Wow, this is fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how Hopkins's ideas can be applied to modern marketing,
Yeah.
even though the world has changed so much since his time.
And that's the beauty of it. His work is rooted in these timeless principles of human psychology. It all comes back to understanding people. And Hopkins understood that people don't like taking risks.
Oh, yeah?
He told that great story about the 2 horse salesmen, remember?
Wait, remind me.
So one salesman, he offered a money-back guarantee. The other one, he didn't. Which one do you think sold more horses?
I'm going to go with the one with the guarantee. Because it makes sense. You take away the risk, people feel safer about making a purchase.
Exactly. And you see it everywhere in marketing today. Free trials, money-back guarantees, satisfaction guarantees. It all comes from understanding risk aversion, something Hopkins figured out way back when.
It's incredible how those core principles, those ideas from almost a century ago, are still the foundation of so much of what we do today in digital marketing. It's like he laid the groundwork for direct response copywriting.
It really is remarkable. And, Hopkins also understood the importance of that personal touch in marketing. He gave this example of 2 clothing businesses. One used really generic messaging, nothing special. The other one, they had this motherly woman as the face of the company. She'd write personal letters to customers. They used her picture in the ads. Which approach do you think worked better?
Well, I'm guessing the motherly woman was a hit. Because people crave connection, don't they? That personal touch, it makes a business feel more human, more approachable.
You got it. It's about building that relationship like a good salesperson would. And speaking of salesmanship, we have to talk about Hopkins' emphasis on specificity in copywriting.
Right. He hated vague claims.
Oh, he couldn't stand them. He said specific details are what build trust and credibility.
He used that great example of the tungsten lamp.
Oh, yeah.
The ad said it had 3 1/3 times the light. They could have just said it was brighter, right? But that specific detail, it made it so much more believable.
It's all about quantifying your claims. Whenever you can, use numbers. Don't just say your product is long-lasting. Say it's guaranteed for 20 years. Don't just claim your service is convenient. Tell them it saves you an average of 5 hours per week.
Those specific details, they paint such a vivid picture in the reader's mind.
Exactly. It's the difference between saying, our software is easy to use and 90% of our customers are up and running in 15 minutes. That second one packs a punch.
It does. And remember that clothing store that advertised its 3% profit margin?
Oh, that's a great one. Why would a business highlight such a low profit margin? Seems crazy, right?
It does, unless it's about transparency. It's like they're saying, look, we're not trying to rip you off. We're offering fair prices, honest value.
Exactly. It's counterintuitive, but it works. You build trust by being upfront with your audience. Now, let's dive into something Hopkins called the unique mechanism of the problem, or UMP, and the unique mechanism of the solution, the UMS.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting. This is still used by copywriters today. UMP and UMS. It's all about crafting that compelling narrative. Can you break it down for us?
Sure. The UMP is all about pinpointing the specific problem your product or service solves. But more importantly, it's about understanding why that problem exists in the first place. You're not just stating the problem, you're digging deeper. You're getting to the root cause.
So it's about understanding the underlying mechanism behind the problem, not just the surface level.
Exactly. You're looking for that unique aspect that makes this problem especially frustrating or difficult to solve. Then, once you've got the UMP nailed down, you move on to the UMS.
The solution.
The unique mechanism of the solution. This is where you showcase how your product or service offers a unique solution to that specific problem.
So it's not just, we solve this problem, it's, here's how we uniquely solve this problem in a way nobody else can.
You got it. You're highlighting what sets your solution apart, that special something that makes your product or service the perfect answer to the UMP.
That's brilliant. It gives your copy such focus.
It makes your claims so much more persuasive.
Can you give us an example from Hopkins' work?
Sure. Think about his Schlitz beer campaign. Back then, most beer was made pretty much the same way. But Hopkins, he discovered that Schlitz, they used a unique filtering process.
To ensure purity.
Right. And that became their UMS, the purest beer in the world. He even talked about all the steps Schlitz took to achieve that purity, like sterilizing bottles with live steam.
So even if other breweries were doing similar things, Hopkins framed it as a unique selling point for Schlitz.
And it worked.
Big time.
Right.
It's a great example of how to find and leverage that UMS, how to make a product stand out in a crowded market.
Absolutely. And another important element that Hopkins emphasized was addressing objections head on.
Right. Because no matter how great your product or service is, some people are always going to be hesitant. Maybe they've had a bad experience in the past, or they're just naturally skeptical.
Exactly. And Hopkins, he said, don't shy away from those objections. Address them directly in your copy.
Don't try to sweep them under the rug.
Nope. Acknowledge them and then give a strong counterargument. It's like you're having a conversation with your reader.
You're anticipating their concerns.
You're showing them that you understand their perspective, and that builds trust.
Okay, so we've got our UMP, our UMS, we're addressing objections, we're using specific details. What else? What's missing from our copywriting toolkit?
Well, this one might surprise you. Hopkins was a big believer in using longer copy. Now, I know that might seem counterintuitive, especially in today's fast-paced world. We always hear, brevity is king, right?
Keep it short and sweet.
But Hopkins argued that engaged readers, they're willing to read longer copy, as long as it's interesting, as long as it gives them valuable information. He even told a story about a man who bought a Marmon car because the ads were so detailed.
So it's not about cramming everything into a couple of sentences. It's about telling the whole story.
A compelling story.
Giving the reader enough information to satisfy their curiosity and address any concerns they might have.
Exactly. Now, of course, this doesn't mean you should just ramble on and on.
Right. Every word still has to count.
Every word has to earn its place. But don't be afraid to go a little longer if it serves your purpose.
Okay, this has been mind-blowing. I feel like I'm seeing the world through Claude Hopkins' eyes. So much good stuff here. But I know our listeners are probably thinking, okay, great, but how do I actually put this into practice? How do I take these concepts from Hopkins and use them in my own copywriting?
Right. Well, it all starts with analysis. Before you even think about writing, you need to really understand the product or service you're selling. What problem does it solve?
Right.
Who is your target audience? What keeps them up at night? What are their pain points?
It sounds like you need to do a lot of research before you even start writing.
Absolutely. It's worth it, though, because the more you understand your audience, the better you can speak to them in your copy. And then once you've done that research, you can start to identify the UMP and the UMS.
Unique mechanism of the problem. Unique mechanism of the solution.
You got it. What's the unique thing about this problem? Why does it exist? And then how does your product offer a solution that's different from everyone else's?
Just like that Schlitz example. Finding that special angle that makes your product stand out from the crowd.
Exactly. It's about highlighting that unique value proposition, the thing that sets you apart. And then when you start writing your copy, you focus on all those key elements we talked about. Pain points, promises, proof, objections, curiosity. It all comes together.
It's like building a puzzle. All these pieces fit together to create the bigger picture.
I like that. And don't forget, testing is crucial. Hopkins was all about testing. Don't just assume you know what will work best.
Got to test different approaches, see what resonates with the audience.
Absolutely. Data is king, right? In direct response, you have to know what's working, what's not. And speaking of testing, don't be afraid to play around with different lengths of copy. Brevity is good, but sometimes you need to go deeper.
Longer copy can actually be more effective.
Sometimes, yes. If it helps you tell the whole story, if you need the space to address objections, then go for it. Remember that story about the Marmon car? Sometimes more is more.
Starting to think about copywriting in a whole new way now.
That's the power of Hopkins, right? His insights are still so relevant today.
So let's recap. Our listeners have now taken a deep dive into scientific advertising. We've explored UMP, UMS, we've talked about those persuasive hooks. What's the one piece of advice you would give them to really put this knowledge into action?
You know, the best advice I can give is this. Don't just read scientific advertising. Really study it.
Ah, okay.
Analyze the examples Hopkins gives and think about how you can apply those principles to your own work. And remember, this is a journey. It's not a destination. The more you practice, the more you'll become a master of this craft.
Fantastic advice. And on that note, we're going to wrap up another incredible deep dive. Until next time, keep those words flowing and those conversions coming.